You don't walk into my son's room. You don't touch what's mine. His face burned, red veins straining against his temples, the posture of a man used to absolute obedience. Naomi did not flinch. She rose slowly, the boy still pressed against her shoulder, his small hand gripping her blouse like a lifeline. Her voice, though trembling at first, found steel in its core. With respect, Mr. Hale, I've buried a son already. I won't watch another die while I stand silent. For a moment Richard froze. He hadn't expected defiance from a maid. His empire had been built on people bowing on fear, dressed as loyalty. Yet here stood Naomuskin, dark as polished wood, eyes lit with both grief and fire, holding the only thing he valued in this world. He stepped closer, looming. You're out of line, he hissed. You're paid to clean, not to meddle. Naomi shook her head. I don't need your money to tell me what I hear every night. That child isn't haunted. He's hurting, and you're too proud or too blind to see it. The boy whimpered softly, then quieted against Naomi's chest as though her voice alone had soothed him. Richard noticed his breath faltering for half a second. He remembered the expensive doctors, the endless medications, the soundproofing of the nursery walls, all worthless. Yet this woman with nothing but her arms and her voice had done what none of them could. Still pride clawed at him. You think you know better than specialists than me. Naomi's answer was a whisper sharpened to a blade. I know what it feels like to lose a child. Do you? The question struck deeper than he admitted. His jaw tightened. His late wife's memory loomed like a shadow in the chamber. The journals Naomi had found were proof of truths he had locked away. He turned toward the open panel in the wall, eyes narrowing at the sight of the hidden room. The leather straps, the journal's evidence of grief, of secrets he had chosen to bury. Naomi placed the boy gently back in his bed, brushing his damp curls with tenderness. You can fire me, she said, standing tall. But you can't silence what's already in this house. He's crying for more than sleep. He's crying for the truth. Richard's fists clenched, but his voice wavered. For the first time in years, someone had pierced his armor. And the boy, no longer screaming, breathed softly, peaceful, under Naomi's watch. Richard's glare still burned against her, but Naomi's attention stayed fixed on the open panel in the nursery wall. The chamber beyond seemed to breathe a hollow, damp exhale that smelled of mildew and old sorrow. Something in her chest urged her forward. She picked up a lamp from the bedside table and stepped into the narrow gap. The light revealed walls stained with watermarks and handprints so faint they seemed like ghosts pressing from within. The chamber was no mere storage space, it had been used. Naomi's breath hitched when her eyes fell upon a small iron cot pushed against the far wall. Its mattress was rotted, but the leather straps nailed to its frame told their own story. This wasn't a place for rest. It was a place for restraint. On a rickety shelf nearby lay a stack of journals, their covers cracked, pages curling with time. She opened one carefully. The handwriting was frantic, uneven, scrolled with a mother's desperation. He cries because he knows. He cries because he isn't Richard's. Another entry trembled with guilt. If I keep him here, maybe the voices will stop. Maybe the house won't see. Naomi's heart clenched. These weren't the notes of a woman simply grieving. They were confessions, proof that the late Mrs. Hale had carried a secret too heavy for the marble halls above. Behind her, Richard's voice broke through the dark. Put that down, he ordered, though his tone cracked with something closer to fear than authority. Naomi turned her lamp, illuminating the cot, the straps, the words trembling across the journal's pages. You've built palaces of glass and steel, Mr. Hale, she said softly. But this is what your son has been living with. This pain, this memory. Richard's jaw locked. For years he had ignored the whispers of his late wife's instability, the strange renovations she had demanded the sealed wing. No one entered. He had told himself that money and silence could bury the past. But standing here, confronted with the Chalmers's cruel truth, he felt his empire of denial collapsing stone by stone. Naomi pressed the journal against his chest. You can't medicate away what's written in these walls. He's not cursed. He's carrying what was left behind. Richard's hand shook as he held the book. He looked past Naomi to his son, finally asleep breath, even peaceful under her care. For the first time in years, Richard's power, his money, his pride known of it mattered. The truth in that hidden chamber was louder than any midnight scream. Richard staggered back from the hidden chamber, as if the walls themselves had struck him. His knuckles whitened around the journal, but his voice rose, desperate, trembling with a fury that sounded more like fear. Enough. You think you know my life. My wife. You're just a maid. Naomi didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her lamp casting long shadows across the rotting cot and the straps still dangling like accusations. Her voice was calm, low but edged with iron. I know the sound of a child in terror. I know what it means when medicine fails. When doctors shake their heads, when no one listens until it's too late. I buried my son, Mr. Hale. Do you want to bury yours? The words cut through him sharper than glass. Richard's breath stuttered, his chest heaving. For a moment his pride clashed against the image of his boy. His only heiring, pale and broken in a coffin. He turned toward the bed. The child lay quiet, asleep in Naomi's care, as though her presence had unlocked a peace his fortune never could. Richard's mask cracked. His voice dropped, barely audible. What do you want from me? Naomi's eyes softened, though her spine stayed straight. Not money, not gratitude, just the truth. Face it. Stop hiding behind walls and doctors. He doesn't need more silence. He needs you. Not the man in the suit, not the billionaire. His father. The weight of her words filled the nursery. Richard's gaze fell to the floor, his hands trembling around the journal. He remembered his wife's final days, her wild eyes, her whispers he dismissed as madness. He had chosen pride over listening. And now his son screamed that same pain every night. His knees buckled, and for the first time in years, Richard Hell, the man who never bowed, sank into the rocking chair by his son's crib. His voice broke. I don't know how, he whispered. Naomi stepped forward, laying a gentle hand on the child's blanket. Then let me show you, but you have to choose. Pride or his life. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, shifting like a storm finally breaking. And in that silence, Richard's empire of denial began to collapse. The nursery was thick with silence, broken only by the boy's steady breathing. Richard sat hunched in the rocking chair, the journal heavy in his lap. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages, the ink smeared with a woman's grief. Naomi stayed near the crib, her presence steady, her eyes never leaving the child. She already knew what he would find. She had read enough. But some truths she thought a man had to uncover with his own eyes. Richard's breath hitched as he reached an entry written in his late wife's frantic scroll. He cries because he knows. He cries because he isn't Richard's. The words stared back like a blade pressed against his chest. He shut the book, then opened it again as if rereading could make them change. But the handwriting was hers. The truth undeniable. He pressed his palm against his forehead, his voice raw. She lied to me. All these years, my son. Naomi cut in gently but firmly. Your son is right there sleeping. He looked up sharply, pain and disbelief tearing through his gaze. His, not mine. Her voice was steady, the weight of her own past shaping every word. Blood doesn't make a father. Love does. Presence does. Do you think he cares about your boardrooms, your wealth, your name? He cries because he feels the absence of the one person who should have been there. And that person is you. Richard's throat tightened. He stared at the child, his wife's secret, his household's shame, and for the first time saw not a scandal, but a boy fragile and desperate for safety. His pride, his lineage, his empire. What were they compared to this tiny soul clinging to life? The journals lay scattered at his feet, but Naomi placed her hand gently over them, pushing them aside. You can let this destroy you, she whispered, or you can let it save you. Choose him because he has no one else. The boy stirred, letting out a soft whimper, and Richard instinctively reached toward him. His hand hovered uncertain, then settled against the child's back. The boy quieted instantly, curling into the touch. Richard's eyes widened, wet with something he hadn't felt in years. Naomi watched quietly. This was the turning point, the moment when a man's empire cracked, not from ruin, but from the possibility of becoming human again. Richard's hand lingered on his son's back, the boy breathing steady now, no trace of the midnight terror that had shaken the house for so long. For the first time, Richard allowed himself to truly see not the scandal, not the betrayal, not the fortune at risk, but a child who needed a father. His voice broke raw and unpolished. "Don't leave," he whispered to Naomi. "Not as a maid, as his guardian, as the one who already gave him what I could not." Naomi's chest rose with quiet resolve. She didn't nod. "Not yet. He'll stay," she said softly. "But not for you. For him." She brushed a strand of hair from the boy's damp forehead. "He deserves peace." And in that moment, the house seemed to exhale. Midnight passed, and for the first time in years, silence filled the mansion. Not the silence of neglect, but of rest. A lullaby hummed from Naomi's lips, weaving through the halls, carrying both grief and promise. Sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't building empires or protecting your pride. Choosing love over denial, choosing presence over excuses. True family isn't bound only by blood, but by courage, compassion, and the willingness to show up when it matters most. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. What does family mean to you? And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another story that reminds us of the power of love and truth.